The Words of Radiance. That was a book I just read and finished and completed. My God! This is the second book in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. A few months ago, I read and reviewed The Way of Kings. Absolutely loved it. Became my favorite book by Brandon Sanderson. And I got a lot of silly comments saying Words of Radiance was better. And I'm not sure if I believe them, because I'm like, I'm sure it'll be good, but how do you top The Way of Kings? Oh, that's how you just do it. So, light spoilers for just the general synopsis of this book. Not going to be going into super heavy details on The Way of Kings. I am going to do a mini spoiler section at the end of this video, though. So this one does pick up right where we left off, however, something interesting happens first, something that I did not know about the series. So the prologue of the first book tells us the night of King Gavilar's death, from the point of view of his assassin Szeth. And this book starts off with the same scene, the same night, but from Jasnah, the king's daughter's point of view. So it seems like each book is just doing this from a different POV, and we're just learning a little bit more each time. Really, really love that. Anyway, but from that, we continue following our three main POV characters, Kaladin, Shallan, and Dalinar. Kaladin is now serving Dalinar as one of his bodyguards, protecting his family from any assassination attempts, while also having to keep his own men in line, who are beginning to have some trust issues with the king. And as the war with the Parshendi continues to grow, and a new face from his past shows up at camp, he's got a lot to deal with, but his worst enemy in this one might be his chronic depression. As for Dalinar, he was tasked in the last book with rebuilding the Knights Radiant, an ancient order who protected the world with their mystical powers. He doesn't really know where to start, so he's just kind of fumbling around, avoiding assassination attempts left and right, you know, that sort of thing. And Shallan has now arrived in the city to be betrothed to Prince Adolin, Dalinar's son. And as she continues to study what her and Jasnah were looking into, the mysterious realm known as Shadesmar, as well as her own abilities that seem to be manifesting, she is also getting herself into some, sticky situations. And as with The Way of Kings being Kaladin's book, where we get his full backstory, The Words of Radiance belongs to Shallan. So throughout all of these battles, political intrigue, lore, we are getting her backstory, how she got to the point she did at the start of The Way of Kings, which I thought was a good move to do her next, because there were some revelations at the end of the last book where I'm like, yeah, give me that, please. Now, much like the rest of the series, The Words of Radiance is a very thick book. Like Mother of God, how is this not the longest one? But it remarkably does not feel it at all. In fact, I found this to be quite a bit faster paced than The Way of Kings, which while I absolutely loved, I did think it was a bit of a slow burn, as that book had so much to set up with its world and its characters. But now, all of that is done, so this book sort of just jumps right into it. And not only does it jump right into the story with a lot of interesting new things happening, but it introduces all these fantastic dynamics as we have our three main characters sort of converge and actually interact with each other. I really enjoyed seeing what our main characters thought of the other ones, and I found it interesting how you often know more about certain characters than they do. And in true Sanderson fashion, you know, this is a book that is full of twists and turns, things being built up in the background, big payoffs later on, and while all of the characters, you know, have their own subplots and their own goals that they're trying to achieve, I like how them just all being together sort of makes the plot, move forward a lot more naturally. You don't need to be constantly jumping around to all different parts of the world, because it's all very focused. But of course, we are still getting glimpses of what's going on outside of Alethkar in the interludes. Between each part, Sanderson often gives us a few chapters set in someone completely different's point of view. Notably, this time, we actually got to see the Parshendi side of the war and meet some of those characters, which I thought was very fascinating because they're very different from any other character we have met so far. And I do know that this part of the story gets a lot more development as we go on, so I'm really interested to see how that goes. But it was really great seeing behind the scenes of the Parshendi side, because where we're mostly following the Alethi, it was nice to know, what the Parshendi were planning, so when, stuff does happen, you understand it. I also like how this book continued to develop its magic system, which still does feel a bit more, mystical and mysterious than stuff like Allomancy, but we're definitely learning a lot more about it, and characters can do some very, very cool things, which really opens things up when when it comes to action scenes. You never quite know what you're going to see, and that's very exciting. On the character side of things, I continue to think that our three main characters are absolutely fantastic here. I think Sanderson's exploration of mental health with Dalinar is very impressive, and Dalinar continues to be a very interesting character to follow because he is a lot older than our other POVs, with a lot more experience, and I really liked how he contrasted the other characters in that way. Notably, we also get a pretty big focus on his son, Adolin, who does get a lot of POV chapters in this book as well, so it was great seeing more with him, and I also really enjoyed his relationship with Shallan, who of course is our main backstory character for this book, and while I don't think her backstory really hit as hard as Kaladin's in the first one, I still thought it was very well done, setting up her motivations extremely well. I think Shallan in general is just a really fascinating character, because, you know, on the surface, she doesn't seem like much, but she is a very, very determined character who will go to great lengths to achieve her goals. So it was really great seeing all of these characters meet her, not thinking much of her at first, and then slowly realizing, okay, there might be more to her than we initially thought. And while Szeth, I believe, has less POV chapters in this book than he did The Way of Kings, he continues to be so interesting. And the little bits and pieces we got of him in this book were absolutely excellent. So I mentioned the last time that The Way of Kings, you know, very good. It was mostly setup, but it was like some of the strongest setup I had ever seen. But then Sanderson just went kind of bananas in the last part and just like blew my mind every 10 pages. This book is a little bit different because, you know, you're getting so many crazy moments throughout the duration of the book that when we were getting closer to the ending, you know, I wasn't really expecting it to be as much of an explosion as The Way of Kings, but it kind of was. It doesn't, like, have as many reveals, but it still has them. And unlike The Way of Kings, I mean, it has some just incredible climactic moments that reminded me of some of the best parts of the Mistborn series. Extremely well-crafted payoffs to things that had been building throughout the first two books, while also planting the seeds for things that are to come, and make you really, really excited to read more. So do I think this is better than The Way of Kings? Yeah, I'd say so. So yeah, it goes without saying 5 stars. Still not my favorite book of the year. I mean, I don't think anything's touching Last Argument of Kings, but I think to get, like, even close to that is, like, a marvelous achievement. So now I have Edgedancer to read, and then I'll be moving swiftly into Oathbringer, and then I will go from there. Spoiler time, you know the drill. If you have not read Words of Radiance, please leave, get out of here, what are you doing? So one of my favorite parts of this book was Adolin's duel. He'd been dueling people the whole book, winning all these shard blades, because, you know, he's such a badass, but he got a bit too cocky, and then, like, I think 5 guys were sicked on him, and he was of course saved by Kaladin, who jumps into the ring, and after they win, he announces his identity to Amaram, who was there watching. And now their conflict throughout the book was really fascinating. Amaram didn't recognize him. Kaladin was sort of just like the whole time, he's like, oh my god, this is the guy, and he just keeps wondering if he should snap and just kill him. Then we of course learned that Amaram killed Shallan's brother, and she also wants to kill Amaram. Good lord. And of course, while Kaladin was not able to duel him, because he gets thrown in jail for a couple weeks, I do really love how Dalinar, who, you know, was Amaram's friend and who trusted him, also trusted Kaladin and did his own investigation into Amaram and figured out who he really was. I have so much respect for Dalinar after that scene, man. Like, the whole book, he was sort of ignoring Kaladin, telling him he must have it wrong. I'm like, man, this sucks. Dalinar's so cool. Why don't you just listen to him? Turns out he was. So they send him packing. Bad idea. I know he's gonna come back and do something horrible, but it was really great seeing him finally get exposed. Kaladin's fight with Szeth during the big battle at the end was definitely a highlight. This was the part that really reminded me of different parts in Mistborn. And while it was very satisfying seeing Szeth, you know, get cut in half and die, knowing the Cosmere, it didn't really surprise to see that he was revived by a mysterious entity, who then, of course, proceeded to give him Nightblood from Warbreaker. Now that was something. That when that sword talked, and like I'm like, oh my! I figured this series would have like Cosmere crossover. I didn't think it was happening this soon though, and I did not think it would be with Warbreaker. Wow. That's interesting, and also incredible, and I am so excited to see how Szeth and Nightblood's relationship plays out. It also makes me realize now why Sanderson intends to make a sequel to Warbreaker, because I kind of want to know what happened there. Why is Nightblood here? Either way, amazing, incredible. Oh, another big event that happens near the end is, of course, Adolin killing Sadeas, sort of out of nowhere. I mean, very warranted. Very glad Sadeas is dead. Hell yeah. But might prove to be a bit of a problem for Adolin, because Sadeas kind of an important dude. Kind of owns a Shardblade, Dalinar's old Shardblade, Oathbringer, and Adolin sort of like panics and hides it. And that's like where we leave off. I'm like, okay, alright, give me more, please. And with the third book being called Oathbringer, oh man, I know this is gonna be a juicy plot line. Both because of this, and I'm sure we are also in the next book going to be getting Dalinar's backstory to learn how he actually got Oathbringer. And speaking of Oathbringer, the book, that's Yasna. I knew she wasn't dead, my god. Probably the least surprising thing about the end of this book was Yasna's reappearance after she had seemingly been dead for the whole book. Cover of Oathbringer aside, it was still very obvious she wasn't. I don't even think Sanderson meant to, like, make this be a twist, because we all knew that that was not the end of Yasna Kholin. But still, her reappearance in front of Hoid at the very end of the book, very excellent, very well done, and a very great way to end off this chapter. A few other thoughts, still very interested in Taravangian. We did not see much of him in this book, but the little parts we did of were excellent. I really enjoyed Shallan's interaction with the Ghostbloods. I loved learning more about the Knights Radiant. I'm getting a feeling that every POV chapter we're getting, in both our main ones and the interludes, I have a feeling they're all going to end up as Knights Radiant by the end of this leg of the story. Just a theory that's probably been confirmed by now. That's the vibe I'm getting, and if so, I think it's so good. I don't feel like much need to predict stuff when, you know, so much more of the series is out already. But yeah, I'm very eager to jump into the rest of it and see what happens. So with that, thank you all so much for watching. You can leave your thoughts on the Words of Radiance in the comments down below, and I'll see you all soon for a new video. I'm not really sure what the video will be on, but it will be one. That will come out. Yeah, we'll do it.